Well, it's complete rubbish. I mean, the fact is, Catherine is the least racist person you'll ever meet. She was, when she went to school in Jordan, one day they'd be quoting the Bible, the next the Quran. The fact is, it's just a nonsense. She was raised very much in a kindergarten that was multi-faith, multi-race. So absolute nonsense. And you only have to see her when she mingles with anybody from any community, from any walk of life. She treats everybody the same. So utter nonsense. As for the king, to suggest the king is a racist, given the work he's done for interfaith relations and for the working communities, it beggars belief, really. But nothing. I'm not saying necessarily that Obi's story is wrong. Maybe Meghan did call them the two races, but that sort of played something more about Meghan than it says about anything else. We're now at a situation, I think, where there's a total lack of trust between William and Harry. Look, I think the king, is his son, and he would love there to be a relationship, I'm sure, but he too cannot trust him. Harry slated the Queen Camilla. That makes life very, very difficult. And when he turned up as after the king had announced that he had cancer, was given half an hour, 25 minutes at Clarence House. That sort of shows you the level of mistrust. The fact that they was reorganised from. I think he thought it was going to go and stay at Sandringham, but it was rescheduled for a short, brief meeting at Clarence House. That sort of says it all, really.
Now, there are bombshells after bombshells in this #1 Sunday Times best-selling book, Katherine, the Princess of Wales, by Robert Jobson. I want to talk about a couple of historic moments, Jobbo, that you have actually brought some real exclusive reporting to and a lot of context to as well. So firstly, that walkabout, we all remember it. It shocked us. No one was expecting it. Just days after the death of the late Queen, emerging outside Windsor Castle, having really not spoken to each other for months and months and months, the Sussexes and Prince William and Catherine. Now, you say in this book, you reveal in this book that actually that's really one of the hardest things that Catherine's ever done.
Yeah, she said that. She said that to somebody within the family. It was one of the hardest things she ever had to do. Because, there'd been so much said, and actually there was stuff that came out afterwards that was even worse, but there's been so much said and so many accusations that to put on that show, and you only have to look at the actual way when Catherine gets out of the vehicle and sees Meghan, she gives her a pretty firm stare. It must have been pretty difficult for Meghan too. But at the end of the day, a lot had been said, a lot of damage had been done. And she didn't want to do it. Well, not didn't want to do it. She did it because of the Queen, and because a love and respect for the Queen, and because of a love and respect for her husband. But they decided to do that. This Fab Four show of, the show. But it was a bit like, putting the Beatles back together in 1971. It wouldn't have happened, So I just think, and I don't think they were the Fab Four. I think clearly Meghan was probably more like the Yoko Ono of the scenario.
Well, the thing is, she's an actress too.
At the end of the day, it was very difficult. She said it was one of the hardest things she had to do. They did it. She did it out of respect for the Queen. But yeah, they weren't particularly. I mean, you only have to look at the body language to realise they weren't. There wasn't some sort of reconciliation there.
And then the other really fascinating moment that you provide a lot of insight on in this book is Catherine's involvement, which hadn't previously been reported, after the Oprah Winfrey interview, where the late Queen, ended up releasing that astonishing statement, recollections may vary. So what was Catherine's role in that, Jobbo?
I think really as somebody had showed great strength and sense, but everyone was worried at that time around the royal family exactly how to react. I think you have to remember it was only William that said that William was the only person who later commented, "We're not a racist family."
Yes.
The rest, everybody else didn't say a word, and they were so worried about the whole thing that they didn't really know what to do. I think the most important thing that Catherine did was to remind everyone that this is an historic moment, and you have to make it clear what your position is without necessarily calling somebody else a liar. So I think she was the one who came up with that phrase, that was out there. But, the recollection may vary because, you can't sit there and take it on the chin. If you do, it's fact. It goes down in history. We've seen that with so many things about the king. Allegations that were made against him when he was Prince of Wales. Most of them border dashed, but the reality is that, they were never properly counted. They were never properly, and which, annoys him to this very day. So I think he was very much on her side in saying, yeah, we have to be careful here because history will lay this down, that anything that William and Meghan are saying is spread fact otherwise. And as they know, it wasn't. Most of it, as
it was rubbish.
We found out later, it was just, frankly, drama, ladled with more drama. And the level of accuracy, as the Archbishop of Canterbury said, it was just not true.
And then also, and again, Omid Scobie, that odd little bloke, slightly responsible for this, but speculation that Catherine was the royal racist that Harry and Meghan were talking about.
It was Catherine and the king that he was claimed to be. But if that is well, it's complete rubbish. I mean, the fact is, Catherine is the least racist person you'll ever meet. She was, when she went to school in children's, one day they'd be quoting the Bible, the next the Quran. The fact is, it's just a nonsense. She was raised very much in a kindergarten that was multi-faith, multi-race. So absolute nonsense. And you only have to see her when she mingles with anybody from any community, from any walk of life. She treats everybody the same. So utter nonsense. As for the king, to suggest the king is a racist, given the work he's done for interfaith relations and for the working communities, it beggars belief, really. But nothing. I'm not saying necessarily that Obi's story is wrong. Maybe Meghan did call them the two races, but that sort of just portrays something more about Meghan than it says about anything else, because it's simply nonsense to suggest that the king and Catherine in any way have a racist bone in their body.
You write in the book about the earlier relations between Catherine and Meghan. Why did it go so wrong so fast, Jobbo?
Well, one thing I would say on both Meghan and Catherine's defence is that I think that this was always going to be a media story. From covering Diana and Fergie from the 90s, they were always pitted against each other, and they were friends actually for a while, but then they fell out. Look, I don't see why Meghan and Catherine were ever supposed to be friends, because they're just married to two brothers, and that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be any sort of love between them or any form of relationship. Most people's sisters-in-law, they see each other maybe Christmas and maybe a birthday. That's about it, really. So I don't see why we expected there to be this. There was that one photograph at Sandringham where they were seen walking together, and I think the palace then took it upon themselves to create this Fab Four when they did that foundation together. Really, that probably was a little bit like, just trying to attach two organisations, two different couples that didn't necessarily want to be attached. And that was a mistake. That was a mistake at the very outset. And they come from, they were very different. Catherine did her studies. She's been involved with William for a long time. She understood how the royal monarchy worked. And Meghan didn't seem to want to have any assistance in the way things were. When the Queen suggested that she befriended Sophie to help her understand things, she said, "I've got Harry, I don't need anybody else." So I think that they of course, they had very different careers, different backgrounds. I don't know why we all expected them to get on. I think it was more of a media creation, really, than anything else. And it was quite clear at that if you actually rewind the tape of the foundation meeting, when they talk about differences and William dances around it. One thing about William is he's always known he's going to be the king. He's the top dog. There's a hierarchy in the royal family, which is I think that Meghan didn't really understand. I mean, I think there was a degree of jealousy as well from her when she went into the, and we know this because Oprah Winfrey said, "Why you're in this little cottage? Where's your palace?" It was, they were in Nottingham Cottage with Harry. Then they would go round to Kensington Palace, and of course, it all been done up for the next king and queen. And I think there must have been a degree of thinking, what's going on here? We're doing all this work. We're the ones on the front page. Why are they getting everything? Because constitutional monarchy has a hierarchy, which goes back to William the Conqueror. It's not difficult.
No, but they got a lot, though, Jobbo, didn't they? I mean, the moment that Meghan made it clear that she wasn't happy with Nottingham Cottage, look at the Queen got her Frogmore and all of the millions of pounds of renovations. So maybe Harry didn't deal with that particularly well in a lot of ways. But I think,
to be fair to Meghan, a lot of things have been put onto her, when actually I think a lot of them are really down to Harry. I mean, Harry knows the score. Harry had been raised as the spare, and clearly the fact that he wrote spare, got someone else to write it for him, but wrote spare, obviously shows that was one hell of a chip that on his shoulder ever since he was a little kid.
Yes.
So, I think that he knew the score. He just probably didn't explain it very well to his future wife.
Jobbo, I think it's worth pointing out, though, you were the first journalist in the world to reveal any tensions whatsoever between Harry and Meghan and the royal establishment, including the Queen, the late Queen. A lot of people forget this because it wasn't in the book that you wrote about William, but it was actually in the book about Charles, which was obviously a brilliant biography where you got a lot of access. But you revealed for the first time, when everyone thought that things were going great between the Fab Four, that actually in the run-up to the wedding, so before they even got married, there had been all of these issues between members of the royal family, members of the royal household, and the late Queen had actually had to get involved. And you were the first to reveal that now infamous line, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." So how difficult was it for you to sort of go against the grain at that time, which was, everything's really great between these two couples, even though that certainly wasn't the truth?
Well, it's very kind of you to say, you're the man that makes it. So, I mean, you were the should have, but yeah, that first story was difficult to go against the grain, and a lot of people that,
it was denied, wasn't it?
Well, he tries to deny, but the reality is, it was said in probably with more expressive terms than that to Angela Kelly. I don't think, again, people misunderstood it and said it was to do with Meghan saying, what Meghan wants, Meghan. She never got involved, and I think a lot of these things she didn't really get involved. This was Harry throwing his weight around to servants, and he threw his weight around a little bit too much. Was too vocal about to the Queen's favourite aide, who was Angela Kelly, and there were, it meant that the Queen, and that was a bit unfair because it meant, of course, that servants can't answer back, not to members of the royal family. So the Queen said that can't happen, and that I think showed the Queen being at her fairest, but it also showed the tensions at that time were huge, and it didn't take long, did it, before we then started to hear that Meghan's family, Meghan's father wasn't going to be at the wedding, and all these other things that were going on, and then we find out about Bridesmaidgate and God knows what else. So all of these things were obviously underlying. Now anybody who's got married knows that there is a lot of tensions around. The detail, which later on people will laugh about. But it was difficult to go against the grain. But I spoke to a very old courtier, actually, who said, be very careful, before you do that. And I said, well, if it's right, it's right. And they said, well, if it's right, then write it. So
and it caused the floodgates to open. It really did.
Well, it started people to start thinking, didn't it? It started people to think, well, that's not as the palace are presenting it.
Well, yeah, it was great for me. It was brilliant for me because you'll remember I was executive editor at The Sun at that point, but I was working for Tony Gallagher, the editor of The Sun, who's now the editor of The Times, actually, very good, solid journalist. And I had a lot of this information, but it was really powerful when I could say to him, look, Robert Jobson is writing this. It's in his book. This narrative is correct. We're going to have some balls here, really, to publish, even though we're getting denials from the royal household. Because for a long time, Jobbo, they denied that there were any issues whatsoever between William and Harry and Katherine and Meghan. And so it is quite brave to publish in a circumstance
I think
when
that
it's
you
been
have
denied.
to. I mean,
but I've only promised to talk to you about products on this show that are actually life-changing. This one is a bit more personal, but the guys watching will completely understand. And let me tell you, girlfriends, wives, if you're looking for a present, a treat for your husband or boyfriend, this is a game changer and they will love it. Because we want our grooming routine to be a one and done deal. So the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your nether regions are over, thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed from 12 till 6. So introducing the brilliantly titled Beard and Balls bundle featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. Now, I'm not talking about this type of lawnmower, but the product provides precision trimming for all areas, even the sensitive ones. And you'll get them as manicured as freshly cut grass. So I'm talking about a trimmer for the moneymaker, another for the boys downstairs. This trimmer gets it right the first time. It's gentle on the skin, and it has 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, so you can choose between a precise trim or a smooth finish. Did I also mention it's waterproof, which means you can trim in the shower, avoid making a mess. Perfect for those of us who appreciate efficiency. Next, I want to tell you about the Beard Hedger. So whether you're going for a neat stubble or a full-on lumberjack look, this trimmer has you covered. It features a titanium-coated stainless steel T-blade, 20 length options, which means you can achieve any style you want with just a twist of the zoom wheel. And just like the lawnmower, the Beard Hedger is also waterproof, so you can handle your beard grooming right in the sink or shower without worrying about water damage. With up to 60 minutes of runtime and an LED charge indicator, you'll never be caught mid-trim with a dead battery either. This is a gentle product, no more cuts. You'll keep your loved ones happy, and using this product will increase your confidence. The best news is, today, I've got a great deal. 20% off and free shipping. It comes really quickly, actually, because I ordered some products the other day. Very, very quickly delivered, beautifully packaged. You just have to use the code Outspoken at the checkout. You'll get 20% off everything via the website www.manscaped.com. So let me repeat that, www.manscaped.com. Use the code Outspoken at the checkout. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped.
I think you have to, though, because I know Tony from years ago. I used to work with him in the old Today newspaper when we were both hacked together. But the reality is on these things is that it's a very difficult dance, whenever you're writing either a newspaper or in a book. And it's so easy for people online to criticise. I mean, I think they're now calling the Royal Rota supine and all this. But you've got to remember that it's a difficult dance. The reality is you've got to be able to operate, but you also got to be able to get as close to the truth as you possibly can. And they don't always tell the truth. Very often they'll have their own agenda, the palace. And as I've always said to anybody starting in royal journalism, and I've done it now for probably too long, 35 years, I'd say, just remember, there's no point really sucking up to press officers. They're goalkeepers. Their job is not to give you stories other than the stories that they've got written down on their little PR sheets. Their job is to stop you getting stories that are true into the public domain. And therefore, you've got to, do your best to get as many very good sources as you possibly can. And again, I always laugh when people tell me that they've got 200 or 150 sources, knowing very well that, if one source or two, you do your best to cling on to that person and keep them safe. So, I think that some of the people that have written recent royal books say they've had 150 sources. Frankly, they must be speaking to the cat.
Yeah, there's a lot of baloney.
So I do.
There's a lot of baloney.
I know how precious. How precious those sources are.
Totally, and I hope that with both of us, certainly, people can look at our track record and look at the stories that we've broken that were denied, but
they
then
don't really,
became
Dan.
true.
I mean, it makes me laugh. They don't really. They look at a book. It's just been, say, serialised in the Daily Mail, and then they criticise the book. There's nothing new in this book. I read it in the Daily Mail. I mean, it's been serialised in the Daily Mail. Of course you're going to read it in the Daily Mail. So I think that people with this book, what I've tried to do, and yes, it was serialised for 3 days in the Daily Mail, is to try to paint a picture. And all you can do in a biography is to paint a fair picture of the person. And I have met her and I've watched her work, but I wouldn't say I'm an intimate, insider with them. I have watched her. I have spoken to her. And I have spoken to members of her family, and I have spoken, to sources, a member of her. I have spoken to sources close to her. But the fact is, you have to just try and paint a picture and a fair picture of that person. Now, in one of the reviews, I think they said it was so gushingly towards her. Yet other people
so you can't win.
Outrageously. Obviously, I'm a Meghanite or something. So, whatever way you look at it, you can't win. But as a biographer, I've learned that not to pay any attention to this. The only thing that matters is that there's two sort of rules you could set yourself. And I think the first one is to be as true to yourself as possible when you're writing it. Try your hardest to dig as deep as you can and to paint an overall picture of that person. But the devil is in the detail, and those details have to be right. But the other thing is, I always say to myself, I never let the palace read a book before, and I don't think that's right. I don't think, why should I? I mean, and then I'm allowing it to be edited beyond my own legal position. But if I could sit in a room with that person after they've read the book fully, and I would sit opposite them at a table, I'd be very happy to answer any of their criticism. That's the sort of level that I would want it to be at, because ultimately it's all about perspective. And I think that in this book I paint a very fair picture of a person that really has been a bit of an enigma, really.
She has.
And in many ways, sadly, even after writing it, she still is a little bit. But I hope really I've been able to sort of present.
Yeah. Well, she's not a Diana, is she? She's not a Diana where she's calling up journalists and, Diana would make jokes with you.
Far from it.
She's not like that. Jobber, you mentioned the Bridesmaidgate. Do you know if Meghan made Katherine cry?
I think I think there were a few tears by both. Let's just put it like that. The reality is, it was an upsetting moment involving a small child that really hadn't done anything wrong. My understanding is that Katherine, given that it was Meghan's wedding that was approaching, tried her best to make things better, bringing, to try and build bridges after the incident. I'm not sure how well received that was.
And can we just discuss where things are at now? Because there was this, I guess, life-altering moment in terms of the release of Spare, which you referred to earlier in our discussion. But that changed things permanently, didn't it, Jobbo? Because as soon as Prince Harry decided to make public personal communication between Katherine and Meghan over that incident, he literally in the book publishes the text messages, which I think is really ironic for someone who is still suing newspapers for phone hacking that apparently took place 20 years ago, yet he's prepared to reveal Katherine, the future Queen's private messages in a book. But also, of course, the stories about William, but given we're speaking about Katherine today, we don't need to go into it too much. But is it true that once that happened, that was it for William, because he's very protective of Katherine and he just thought Harry had massively overstepped?
I actually think it's even before that. I think that you got to remember that Harry was very much not the king's favourite as such, but was very, very close to the king. William's relationship a bit up and down really with the king. It was a question of total lack of trust. I think that whatever William is accused of doing, whether he was just trying to warn, to say to his brother, I think you're rushing into this relationship, it was taken very, very badly by Harry. They fell out very, very quickly. Sides were taken. it was all very, very emotional, wasn't it? Really, and over the top. We're now in a situation, I think, where there's a total lack of trust between William and Harry. Look, I think the King, is his son, and he would love there to be a relationship, I'm sure, but he too cannot trust him. Harry slated the Queen Camilla. That makes life very, very difficult. And when he turned up as after the King had announced that he had cancer, was given half an hour, 25 minutes at Clarence House. That sort of shows you the level of mistrust. The fact that they was reorganised from. I think he thought it was going to go stay at Sandringham, but it was rescheduled for a short, brief meeting at Clarence House. That sort of says it all, really. I think that William has just had enough, really, of Harry's behaviour. Harry's argument is that even the King, when Dimbleby wrote that book, breached the trust with his own parents, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, and in many ways he's probably quite right. I was around when that book emerged, and it was a bombshell when it happened, with all the criticism of the parenting skills of Queen Elizabeth VIII, Queen Elizabeth, and the Duke of Edinburgh. So, there has been some sort of link. Although I don't think that Prince Charles divulged to Dimbleby, Harry lost his virginity. But I think Spare really has just blown it out of the water in terms of any real future relationship going forward. I don't think they think there's a need, and I don't think it will happen.
And Katherine doesn't speak to Meghan anymore?
I think if you go, I advise everyone just go back and look at that footage of the Fab Four on the walk together after the late Queen Elizabeth died. Just look at the footage, and I think moving pictures speaks 1,000 words. Moving pictures in this case speak about 10,000 words. I mean, there is no relationship.
Just before we wrap, Jobbo, I want to go back a little bit, because this was one of the other really fascinating revelations in the book, which did cause quite a lot of controversy on the front page of the Daily Mail. You revealing quite how brutal, I guess, William was during that first breakup with Katherine. Can you explain a little bit about why he treated her in that way then? And was it a test, or was he actually genuine in terms of thinking this might not be the woman who I married? And how did Katherine win him back so quickly, Jobby? Because I think it was only 3 months or something like that, and she's sitting behind the Princess Diana memorial.
It's a good question. I mean, I think when I saw it, I thought, look, the reality is William is 6 months or so younger than Kate and Katherine, and at university he met her. They'd actually met before, funny enough. They'd met, when they were at school, but not in any real close way. So that's why they became friends at university, because they had sort of knew each other a little bit. Look, I think that he was very early. He was in his very early, mid-20s, early 20s. And there was all that clamouring, I remember every 5 minutes people would say, particularly when Kate was 25, it's going to happen this week, they're getting married. And he was just nowhere near ready to get married at 24. He just wasn't. And so he obviously felt, had a conversation with his father probably and other friends, and just didn't, it was the right girl, but probably at the wrong time. And there was all the talk about security, the fact that she was going through the whole Diana experience, photographers outside her flat in Chelsea all the time. And so something had to give. And I think that's what happened. Remember, he'd finished at Sandhurst and he was in the military. But so his time to see her was quite restricted anyway. And I think he just decided that was that. And then, did it in quite a brutal way. And she was pretty heartbroken, and went off to Dublin with her mum, and they just tried to get over, take him out of the spotlight before she started, going out herself and enjoying herself. And I think that when he suddenly realised just what he'd lost, and the fact that she was out there enjoying the social scene of London with her sister Pippa, I think he suddenly thought, well, what have I done? And so to get her back, I think he had to try quite hard. But they'd been together a pretty long time. They had a lot of shared experiences at university, and I think when they saw each other again at the that party, the Cohen party, there was still a fizz, a chemistry between them, and they got back together. So look, I'm not too harsh on him. He was a very young man, and he probably knew, with all the media pressures that were put on him, that people would be talking about marriage. And as soon as they got back together, everyone was talking about marriage again. So I think there had to be some sort of arrangement that once they got back together, they knew it would end in a formal relationship, because it wouldn't be fair on her. And I think that was probably agreed between the two.
But you have always been honest in your previous books about William that he does have a bit of a temper, and sometimes he can get a bit, mad at Catherine, but she calms him down. Is their marriage in a strong, secure place now, Jobbo?
Well, you see, I think William obviously in any relationship, there are ups and downs. I mean, goodness, there has to be. And there's nobody perfect, and there's nobody flawed in any of that. And there'll be times when you remain in love, but, slightly out of love with that person at the same time. And I think that that's happened like in any marriage. But the reality is, and what's clear for William, both at the time when they split up, but more recently at this juncture when they've had their 3 children, and, he's really, grown into that role as heir to the throne now, that he really needs her alongside him. For them to have that moment that she could be taken away and in the most tragic of circumstances, must have been devastating for him. And I think when that happened to him, as I said, he was crestfallen, particularly with what happened with his dad as well, the king. I think he's just shown cometh the hour, cometh the man, and shown great strength of character and great purpose, not only looking after his young children, and the way he's grooming George is a fantastic example, the way he's introducing him to what the role will be. I think he's just risen to the challenge. And everyone has their ups and downs. Everyone's got a bit of a temper, even us, Dan. But the fact is, I think he's shown great strength of character. And that has been done with the support of his wife and his father. And there's no doubt, too, he's got much closer to the king as well, although they still have their ups and downs. So, look, I think it really has been cometh the hour, cometh the man from the Prince of Wales, Prince William, who's shown himself to be, as I said, shown his true mettle.
Well, look, Jobbo, this is an absolutely incredible book. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, a #1 instant Sunday Times bestseller. Come on, that's a bit of a career highlight. That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is, Dan, and I'm overwhelmed and really feel grateful to the people who bought it. All I would say is, please read it.
Don't base it off what you're seeing on X.
You criticise whatever you like about it, but just read it first. It'll be helpful, because clearly people, when I saw I got a 1-star review from someone 3 days before it had been published, I thought that was quite special, but there we are. But, the most important thing for me is that hopefully when you finish reading the book, it's not the revelations, is that you get a better picture of Catherine, who is a tremendous lady and somebody who I think is a huge asset to the royal family and to the British monarchy.
And the old dog still got it, Jobbo. Congratulations. so good to speak to you again. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.